first article is regarding India and ASEAN relations. And as we know that ASEAN consists of 10 countries, fine, and it was the 25th years completed of India and Asian relationship. So we were celebrating it, and we invited all the representatives of these 10 nations on our Republic Day as joint chief guest. Fine. Now, the thing is, the writer is saying that what India and South Asia needs to do is to move beyond symmetry means these countries needs to move beyond these doing summits and all. They have to act more basically to deeper integration. What is required is deeper integration. So see, with this invitation and with the coming of Asian nations heads, it's shown that India's ties with Asian got a dose of symbolism because we invited them on Republic Day. They accepted our invitation, they were here, fine. And it also had a substance in the form of that we had a Delhi declaration regarding that what course of action we are having with with respect to our relationship with the Asian nations. Fine, so it had both symbolism as well as substance. Now, why they're saying so? First thing is that, see, as the demand for the Indian goods in the Western economies goes on decreasing, fine, so we need different markets. We need to diversify our market, and the demand for diversification of market can be fulfilled definitely by the Southeast nations. Fine, and many of the countries are still untapped for India. Fine, so definitely it's a big market for India. So, okay. Now, next is continuing tensions between the great powers. See, in these days, it's been seen that we have a sort of tension between USA and Russia. It's like it's since ages. We have Cold War, and then fine. After Cold War, many people are saying it as Cold War 2.0, but we cannot say that it's Cold War 2.0. Anyways, so we are having tensions between USA and Russia. We are having tensions between USA and highly ambitious China. So what can be the balancing force here? So obviously these unaligned countries, that means the South Asian ones and India, they can forge a common understanding. Fine. The second thing is this. Now, third thing is that, is the third thing on? Yeah. See, see, with Asian nations, we are having a 2000 years long trade and cultural ties. Even in ancient period also, we were having our trade ties with the South Asian nations. I don't know which nation. I guess Myanmar was also known as the Swan Bhumi and Swan Dweep. These kind of terms were used. Even the Chola ruler were having trade ties with the southeastern nations. So definitely we have that Gautam Buddha cultural influence. Many of the East Asian nations do have a large Muslim population, and Muslim population is India's largest minority. So definitely we are having a long history of cultural ties with the Southeast Asian nations. Fine. So in this context also, the cooperation with the Southeast and the Asian nations are definite. The first is the economy. The second is definitely as a means as a force, which can force understanding in this era of tensions between the great powers. And the third is the cultural reason. Fine. Now, India and ASEAN have unique opportunity to reap the potential of their geographic proximity, because we are having our northeastern border close to Myanmar. So definitely we are having geographical proximity, and Myanmar is one of the Asian nation. Next is, now what India is trying to do with this Delhi declaration. Both the areas, they have articulated their concerns, and we are trying to deepen our security, economic and socio-cultural cooperation and connectivity. Fine. It was said by these Singaporean, Prime Minister only shared, three C's basically. Okay, three C's was there with the respect to ASEAN and India, and the first is the commerce, connectivity, and culture. These three C's needs to be promoted. Anyways, it's not a part of this article. Okay, so next is that India and ASEAN are also trying to develop a code of conduct for the South China Sea. See, this code of conduct is definitely with respect to China, because China is getting more aggressive in the South China Sea. As we all know, the dispute over different islands and the permanent court of jurisdictions. Judgment on that nobody should try to transgress the law and all these things. So India and Asian nations are trying to develop a code of conduct for the South China Sea. Apart from that, one major concern is this, that although we are trying our efforts to engage with Asian nations and 25 years are over of our relationship, but the thing is that trade with ASEAN is still at $76 billion only for the year 2016 and 17, although it's not given here. So it's $76 billion, and India not only ranks below US and China, but also below South Korea, Japan, and Australia. So definitely India needs to work on this front. Apart from that, the RCEP, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, fine, it's still not completed because of India's concerns regarding Chinese goods into the Indian market, that Indian market will be flooded by the Chinese goods if RCP is signed. Um, Apart from, and Asian nations, they are showing resistance to movement of Indian services and labor in the market. So the thing is that the writer is saying that this RCP needs to be sort out very soon. It should be sorted out soon. The other big unfulfilled promise is definitely on the connectivity issue between ASEAN and India. Fine. See, we are working on this Kaladan multimodal project, then IMT, the trilateral highway between India, Myanmar, and Thailand, and we are all, in fact, we are trying to extend it beyond Myanmar to Laos and Cambodia as well. But the thing is that the pace is quite slow. We are still, not closer to to the end of these projects. So definitely, connectivity is a major issue between this India and Southeast Asian nations. Apart from trade, as I told here, trade and investment, next issue is connectivity. These two are basically the area of concern that India needs to work on. Fine. Now the next thing only in this article is that heavy lifting is required to integrate India into the Asian equation. Otherwise, if heavy efforts are not done, then shared history of 2000 years and culture and political leadership in sync, means whatever sync the political leadership in both these areas are having, they may not yield any results. Fine. So we need to move beyond this process of summits and all with Asian nations. This article was about all these things. Next article is also with context of India and ASEAN, and but the article is trying to emphasize that India can act as a vital bridge between South and East Asia. Fine. We are not talking about Southeast Asia. We are saying South and East Asia. Okay. Let's see what they are trying to say. See, the first thing is that as India's look east policy matures into an act east policy, a strong relationship with ASEAN is no longer a policy option. Rather, it's an economic and strategic necessity. See, with what our relationship with ASEAN is not just a policy one, that because we are having a policy, so we must have a certain sort of relationship, or okay. But the thing is that we do have our economic, as I told in the earlier article, that we need market, right? So we do have an economic and strategic interest also. Already told that how India and Asian nations they can forge a kind of understanding when tensions are between the great powers. So definitely it's an economic and strategic interest. Okay. Now, if we try to analyze the relationship in the form of economy, trade, and investment, we get to know that India Asian trade is definitely below China Asian trade. Fine. And not only trade, our investments are also quite low in Asian nations. However, Indian investments in Asians are definitely increasing because in the last few years, India has increased liberalization, deregulation regarding outward foreign investments. Fine. So, definitely, we are trying to improve our relationship on the economic front. And see, this type of things you can quote in the example that Tata Group already has a strong presence in Myanmar and is investing in the IT and agricultural sectors, which will create capacity and generate employment. So, this was about trade and investment. Now, let's look at another angle, that is infrastructure. See, it's a key area which has a lot of potential and which needs to be developed. As I told earlier, that connectivity is an issue which is right now, it's very slow in pace and the projects are not completed. Either it's a IMT, India, Myanmar, Thailand, trilateral highway, or it's Kaladan multimodal project. Fine, we need to boost our efforts towards it. And the important thing is that this connectivity, fine, it will not enhance connectivity between the two countries. I'm sorry, enhanced connectivity between the two countries will not only serve India but also India's neighbors like Bangladesh. Because see, if somehow we are trying to connect with Myanmar, we are trying to connect our Myanmar with the northeast, and we know that our northeast has a long border with Bangladesh. Fine. So if you are providing connectivity to northeast to Myanmar, that means directly to Asian nations, then in a way we can also provide connectivity to Bangladesh. I mean, we can provide an opportunity to Bangladeshi nation to reach to the Asian nations. Fine. So Bangladesh is becoming an intermediate beneficiary. India, which is vying to become, and because India is trying to be a regional leader in South Asia. Fine. So, definitely it can score major points with its South Asian neighbor by connecting them to East Asia. A goodwill kind of will be created, as well as India's soft power will also increase. Fine. Now, next thing, apart from this economy, trade, and infrastructure, let's see what are the strategic issues involved with it. As I told earlier, that there is geopolitical, uncertainty and instability within the region because of the great powers' intention. So, definitely these two particular areas, I mean India and this Asian nations, they can become a balancer and can provide stability to the this entire thing. And one more angle is also covered here, that businesses and governments, they have to confront disruptions to traditional employment structures, because there will be loss of jobs because of digital technologies. Fine. And we see the fourth industrial revolution is definitely impending. So there are a lot many challenges, not only for India but for Asian nations, so they can somehow try to coordinate and cooperate on this front as well. um, Now, Indian Asian strategic cooperation, it's okay, it's not that important. Well, yeah, what is important regarding strategic issue is that given the prevailing regional power imbalance created by a declining US and an assertive China, India and ASEAN are well poised to become strategic partners in ensuring regional peace and stability, because we are seeing that America is trying to pursue the America First or protectionist policy. It's somewhat trying to, its presence is being diluted in this entire South Asian region. And China is trying to be more assertive, fine, because thanks to its ambitious powers anyway. So, what is left? Definitely, there is kind of power imbalance in this region, and India and Asian nations can definitely prove to be stabilizers. So, okay, so this was about strategic issue. Next is socio-cultural issue. See, we have a huge Indian diaspora in almost all Asian nations, which can definitely help to strengthen our ties. Around 1.6 million Indians, they call Malaysia their second home, and Indian film industry is has a huge fan base in Malaysia, in Singapore. So these are the things which creates India's soft power as well. Fine. Apart from that, uh, see what's given is here. Okay, so it's nothing more important here, and here it's saying that in fact, this India is trying to go for filming, trying to go in Southeast East Asian nations as filmy location instead of Europe, because they find it quite cheaper as well. Thailand, Malaysia, and all these things, sea locations and coastal beaches and all. So it's going to be, I mean, a very good location for Indian film industry. So we are having close socio-cultural ties as well, and so in the end it's saying that India must be part of Southeast Asia's balance of forces and a counterweight of China in the Indian Ocean. And the Act East policy, fine, earlier we had Look East policy, then we converted it to Act East policy, but the writer is saying that we need to act upon this also, not just for the namesake Act East policy, but we have to act on this policy as well. So this was all about this article. Next article is about the oil risk that India needs to expedite steps that can minimize the impact of higher oil prices, because it's seeing that the prices for petrol and diesel are nowadays increasingly high, in fact exponentially high. From $45 per barrel in June, it has now reached to $70 per barrel. Okay, so India will have to brace itself for the economic risk involved because of this expensive energy. Fine. Now, the next thing is that, see, normally this oil price dynamics, it's explained that if the supply of the oil is increased in the market and demand is not increased proportional to the supply, then definitely the prices will somehow decrease. And if the supply of the oil is decreased and demand is increased, and supply is less, so the prices will increase. Okay, but hey, whatever the increase in the the prices of oil has taken place in recent past, it's not because of this supply and oil dynamics. Fine, it's because of the weakening of the dollar. Fine, and it's nothing else. It's because of the weakening of the dollar. Although there has been some respite to the OPEC countries means oil producing and exporting countries, and minded USA is not included in that. Why there is respite to these OPEC countries? Because of the competition they faced from the US shale gas. Okay, so because of that, the prices for their oil, the supply was quite high, so they was not getting the right prices. And as we can see that it was $45 in June and now $70. But the real reason behind this increase of prices of oil is because the dollar is getting weak in the international market. Now, see, the thing is that the writer is saying that although the prices are rising, and American Treasury, U.S. Treasury Secretary, he said that America is in favor of a weak dollar, because we should know that when your currency it basically weaks, so your exports they increases. Fine, if I'm not wrong, if I'm wrong then please don't mind it. Uh, anyway, so a weaker dollar would be good for American trade. Okay, I'm thinking in mind and just make it clear to you that okay, now first of all just try to read the article. So the thing is that a weaker dollar would be good for American trade. Now, but the writer is saying that although consumers in India are already beginning to feel the pinch of the high petrol and diesel prices, um, the thing is that this a spurt in the oil prices is not going to be permanent, or it's not going to be there for long run, because of the tighter monetary policy of America, because America is in the middle of tighter monetary policy. And so sooner or later, definitely the dollar will get strengthened in the international market, and the prices of oil will definitely going to be reduced. But the thing is that I mean okay, the consumers are feeling it, and domestic consumers, they are having pressure on their pockets because of the increased. But writer is warning government that government should not try to ease the pressure on the consumers by providing any sort of subsidies. Rather, what government should do is to rationalize the tax, okay, on the petrol and diesel. Fine, because what will happen if government is easing the taxes, obviously the prices for petrol and diesel for the consumers will get decreased. And the this oil marketing companies, they will not be having any sort of burden because of the decreasing of the tax. Okay, so this should be the approach of government, as well as these higher prices are not only going to affect the customers and the consumers, but the government's fiscal deficit will also increase. Fine. So what government should do, apart from this taxation and all these things, government should try to make its hydrocarbon exploration and licensing policy more active. Fine. And it should try to expedite oil discovery and production internally, because see what India could achieve by doing, internal reforms and internal research and exploration. We cannot altogether depend on external factors, right, or on different nations for oil. We should search within our own country. So, and for this India can take leave from China's book, because China basically help its investors which are investing in foreign nations in this oil and sort of field. Okay, so India can also provide help and aid to these kind of investors, because self reliance is ultimately the best hedge, because India should be self reliant within this oil and energy sector, because it's the ultimate protection that one can have. Okay,